Hi, everyone. It's Phil Jones from Projector Reviews, and joining me is Patrick Siebert from JVC. So JVC is one of my favorite brands because they make one of the elite projectors. If you're looking for high quality, JVC is one of the answers, absolutely. So Patrick, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me on the show.
Before we get started, we'd like to thank AV Pro Edge and Meridio for sponsoring this year's Spring Projection Showcase, where we get to talk to some of the leading projector manufacturers. So I always invite JVC because, like I said, I love their products. I think their performance is outstanding when you're looking for a home theater projector. Now, JVC utilizes a version of liquid crystal on silicon, or LCOS, called D-ILA. And there are some advantages to that type of imager. So Patrick, can you talk about what are the advantages of a D-ILA imager instead of like a DLP?
Well, the huge advantage of that is going to be its ability to generate contrast levels and black levels in your image. This technology was originally pioneered by JVC in the late 70s.
One of the main benefits is the ability to deliver great blacks, and that has a massive impact on contrast. And we're not talking that dynamic contrast that you see that's 8 trillion to 1 that you see on a lot of these things, which is basically I turn the light all the way off and switch off the laser, and then I blast you with light. We're talking about actual real world contrast. And that's one of the things that you pay for when you buy a better projector. Because Patrick, why wouldn't you just make the projector brighter to increase the contrast?
Well, unfortunately, you're going to decrease the black levels the more light you throw through a display. So if I just throw light at the issue, it's going to, number one, wash out the color, which we definitely don't want. JVC has a lot of pride in our ability to reproduce color. And the second thing is your black levels, no matter what, are never going to be as dark.
Because there's two ways to increase contrast. Contrast is basically from its darkest to its brightest. And if I take the contrast and if I wanted to double the contrast, I can double the brightness, or I can make the black levels twice as dark. Now, making the black levels twice as dark is harder than making it twice as bright. But say I go from, say the black level is 1 and the brightness is 2000. To make it double the contrast, I make the brightness from 2000 to 4000, or I make the black level from 1 lumen to half a lumen. And believe it or not, the 1 lumen to half a lumen is actually harder. So,
and it's the nice thing is it's not just your black levels and the inky darks that you want on your screen that are immersive, but the very fact that you have so much contrast actually really makes colors pop. It really makes a huge difference in shading of colors because you have all of that range in between the black level and the brightness.
Black is the basis of where everything is applied upon. And the deeper the black, the better the colors, the richer, the more detail you could see. Blacks make your colors look richer. And it's difficult to make deep blacks. One of the main things that separate a great home theater projector like a NX7 or a RS2000 from an also ran is when you turn the lights down in a darkened room and you look at the black levels that can be achieved. The next thing, the box is so much bigger, and a lot of it has to do with the lenses, right? Right, Patrick?
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the major reasons why it's bigger is because we use an all glass 65 millimeter lens assembly and the D-ILA projectors. And in the NX9 or RS3000, we actually use 100 millimeter all glass lens assembly, and that chassis needed to be able to support both. We also, if you don't mind me adding, made the heat sink inside much larger, so we can make the fan noise a little bit lower.
Exactly, because that's the things that I've noticed. If you look at a better projector, I've got projectors that look pretty good, but I'm like, there's light leakage, light coming out of where the fans are coming. It sounds like a jet taking off. So you have this nice home theater, and you hear the fan instead of the action. And then it doesn't matter how good how much resolution is on the imager if the lens doesn't allow that to get out to the user. Lenses are incredibly important. Like, for example, everybody has a camera in their phones, and they're trying to make the lenses better. Like this this Samsung looks like a Cyclops. There's like several lenses on here, but this lens is not the same as this lens. If it was, you'd be seeing sports photographer guys out there shooting like the Olympics like this. There's a reason why you see the cameras with these big old lenses in it. Optics matter when it comes to resolving the resolution. How do I get all of detail off of those incredible devices onto your screen? And your big guy, what he said there, 100 millimeter on the
100
on the
millimeter.
RS3, and that's one of the reasons why it's even brighter. A lot of times because it even lets more of the light out of the projector as well.
Yeah, it improves efficiency. The lamp and the power supply for the lamp don't increase between the NX7 and the NX9, but
Mm-hmm.
the optics are a little teeny bit more fine-tuned, and that lens is more efficient.
You get deeper blacks, which gives you richer, higher native contrast. It makes your colors pop. It makes details more defined. You have better lenses as you step up. And those better lenses make sure that you extract all of the detail that is found on that native, not pixel shifting, native imager. And there's a lot of other custom integration things we haven't even talked about. Like I install a lot of projectors. And when I see one that has motorized horizontal and vertical lens shift, it makes my day because it takes it and makes it a 5-minute proposition to get it aligned to my screen instead of all the and it's trying to stick stuff under it and or even having to get up and roll the little knob to try to get it in focus. So you get what you pay for. And JVC plays at a higher level, at a higher price point for a more discerning customer. And when you see one of their models compared to something that's in a $1,500 DLP, there's a reason why you step up. However, what Patrick wants to talk about today is we talk about all of these fancy high-end parts, but you need to make sure that you optimize the use of those parts regardless of the content that you're playing. And HDR is a challenge for projectors. So Patrick, can you talk about why HDR is challenging for projectors?
Well, it boils down to light levels, essentially. It's very difficult to get OLED type brightness or LED type brightness onto a screen. It's a reflected surface as opposed to an emitted surface. So it's extraordinarily important to get your brightness and your light levels up to be able to achieve HDR levels. And there's a couple of little tricks that people are using to be able to do that with lower lamp power. One of them is auto tone mapping, where it takes a look at metadata that's encrypted on the Blu-ray, and it sets its CLL and FAL levels. It sets its peak brightness and peak darkness based off of that metadata. JVC's decided to take that one step further. We do something called Frame Adapt HDR. And instead of just taking that wide spectrum of the darkest pixel on the Meg, for example, and comparing it to the brightest pixel on the Meg, because the Meg has a huge sweep of brightness. It goes from very, very dark down deep in the water to very, very bright when you come up above the surface. So the ability to look at a frame by frame section of the video that you're watching, or you can do scene by scene as well, it's selectable, but doing a frame by frame analysis of each individual frame is going to give you the best brightness and the best black level on for every single image.
Yeah, and that's a big point. The original HDR metadata, like you said, it was just information about the brightest pixel in the movie and the average overall screen brightness of the brightest frame in the movie. That only works for 1 split second in the entire movie. So if you're watching something, like you said, the Meg is a torture test, because if you can play the Meg, you can play anything, because there are some insane shifts in brightness in that movie. So you can go from doing something like the Meg, which is super bright, into something like Blade Runner, which is super dark, without having to get up or grab the remote control is very, very difficult for a projector for a projector to do. And the only way you could do it is to be able to measure frame by frame or scene by scene yourself. What does that require? A much bigger brain inside of the projector.
Well, one of the best things about Frame Adapt HDR, in my opinion, first of all, it's been received extraordinarily well, and it makes a huge difference. But one of the other things about it is JVC put that big brain in our projectors, knowing that we're going to try to make the most out of this projector, out of your projector. We're going to go in and do a software development, continually do that, so that if you purchased a projector 2 years ago, in this particular case, when the NX7 or NX9 came out, we introduced a year later, introduced software that really changed the game and brought brightness levels way, way up and darkness levels way, way down for each individual frame. We've also done that with a newer technology called Theater Optimizer that I will talk about in just a moment.
Yeah, and I will say that the first time when I got the first review sample, the NX7, I was like, wow, that looks good. It had, automatic tone mapping. And then a firmware showed up and it got better. And all of a sudden it was like, what's going on? They're like, Frame Adapt HDR. And then next thing you know, Chris shows up around the Christmas time with a hat on. Merry Christmas. Here's another thing that you can actually do with this. And all of a sudden it got better. It's amazing. It's like the projector continues to evolve when it comes to its overall performance, because like I said, HDR is challenging for a projector. They have a limited amount of brightness, and it is a fine art to take all that brightness and color information that's found in HDR content and make it look good on a projector. A lot of projectors, people go, how should I set up my projector for HDR? For most brands, I just tell them, watch it in SDR. A lot of them, it'll look better if you just put your Apple TV in SDR. But JVC is one of the few that I will confidently say, yes, the HDR looks better than the SDR because they truly know what they're doing. So we talked about Frame Adapt, and now we have this thing called Theater Optimizer. So can you talk about what the Theater Optimizer is?
The Theater Optimizer actually takes data that you input. You tell it your screen size, you tell it your screen gain. It actually can identify, because of zoom and shift, what your throw distance is. You enter, like I said, the screen size and screen gain, the throw distance is analyzed, and the lamp life is analyzed. And it optimizes that picture for your individual home theater, because everybody's ambient light, everybody's screen is different, everybody's throw distance is just a little bit different. And the projector takes all of those algorithms into account and then produces the best image it can possibly be.
And that's a big point. If you look at an LCD TV or an OLED, that is an encased system. Okay, a projection system, it's a system. Your room, the screen, the projector all have to work together. And it varies from room to room to room. I get asked a lot, hey, can you share your calibration settings? And a lot of times I go, I can tell you basic stuff you should do. Put it into, set your color temperature to warm or something like that, or your color temperature to 6500. But I won't give you all of my minor, small tweaky stuff. Why? Because my room is tan. Your room may be blue, have blue walls, and that light hits the walls and then strikes the screen. And if you put my settings in your projector, you may make it look worse, So the room is a big factor. The screen is a big factor. The type of material of your screen. Is it a gray screen with a 0.8? Is it a high gain screen with a 1.2? All of that is going to impact. And you need to have, the projector needs to have all of that information to make an educated decision. And that's the nice thing about the Theater Optimizer, is you can give, the projector can have all of the information it needs. It knows about the material, and it knows about the room, and it knows about itself to get you the most out of the HDR, right?
Absolutely. And the nice thing is, instead of having to go in and retweak the projector over a year or 2 years or 5 years, as the lamp life decreases and it gets a little teeny bit dimmer, the projector's automatically accounting for that. And just like you said, if you had a screen that had a gray screen that had 0.8 gain, and then I copied your your settings and I have a 1.2 gain screen, I could very easily blow out all of the whites. I could blow out I could blow a lot of colors because that gain inherently raises the overall reflective surface, the brightness of the reflective surface. So you can have too much brightness, believe it or not.
The screen size thing is cool because even if I know what the gain is, it's going to be brighter on a 100-inch screen. It is going to be on a 120-inch screen. And the projector needs to know that so it can actually adjust what it's actually doing. We said that the projector can analyze scene by scene or frame by frame.
So the engineers put together this really cool thing for us. They provide us with a simulator right before this last software came out during COVID. And it does a number of things. It allows us to show it to customers without actually having the product right in front of them. And another thing it does is it makes these video presentations a whole lot more fun. So you don't have to try to look through my laptop camera at my screen that's up on my wall. So it makes it a lot better picture and makes it a lot brighter. So this is the advanced menu. When you go into it, there's content type. Generally speaking, you always want to set it to auto HDR with a JVC projector. You do have the ability to change it to force it into SDR, HDR10, or hybrid log gamma, but the projector will automatically do that once it senses the difference.
There's an info flag that tells it what to switch to, so let it do it.
Absolutely. Picture mode. Frame Adapt HDR is going to be your default, but again, you can switch it to HDR10. You can obviously have settings for an anamorphic lens. There's a number of different things you can do within that, but Frame Adapt HDR is something that we're so very proud of and makes a huge difference, switching it on and off. And if you don't mind me saying, during the Meg that you mentioned earlier, there's a scene where they lower a cage into the water. And if you turn off Frame Adapt HDR and you back down a couple of the settings, you can kind of make out that cage when it's a little bit higher in the water. When you use Frame Adapt HDR, you don't have to touch anything. It comes out automatically. And just like you said before, you can take that disc out and then pop in Blade Runner 2049, and all the super dark pictures of 2049 are automatically compensated for. So it makes a huge difference.
Now, the funny thing about it is I've worked for consumer electronics companies for many years, and they could make a projector that levitates and makes holograms, and people will be like, can I turn it off? So they always give me the option to turn it off, but don't turn it off. Leave it on. It's going to do a better job than you. Leave it on, leave it on, leave it on. Okay.
And that definitely doesn't disparage somebody getting their projector calibrated, right? JVC has incredible software available on our website. If you use it with a Spider X, you can actually calibrate your color on your image pretty darn well. I mean, it's not ISF calibration, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, but the big thing about calibration, I always say, but calibration is basically setting the base to 0. You know, I need to know where to start from. So you always want to have your projector calibrated because it tells the projector, okay, this is the baseline to apply your stuff upon. But even after you calibrate it, turn the Frame Adapt HDR back on. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. Okay.
So with HDR processing, I skipped down to a couple of tractions, but with HDR processing, you can either use static, which is essentially what autotone mapping is, right? It looks at the metadata and just does it. Or you can do frame by frame or scene by scene. I would always recommend frame by frame because it gives you the very most analysis, but that is something that you can select yourself and choose yourself.
Yeah, and now to think about this, we're talking about this projector is measuring the scene, the brightest pixel, and the frame, and what's going on in the scene, every single frame. So if you're looking at a movie, that's 24 frames per second. If you're looking at something that was maybe done at a higher frame rate, like on Netflix, that's 60 frames per second that this projector is making a measurement and making a decision on how to render that image. So that really shows the amount of brain power that has been put into these projectors. Like I hear a lot, how come these high-end projectors don't have Netflix? Go buy yourself a Roku if you need Netflix. I'd rather have them spend the brain power on making the picture better than showing me YouTube, which I can find on 9 other different devices. So So to me, that's a better use of JVC's money.
And your money.
And my
$39, yeah, $39, $49 Fire Stick or whatever plugs
yeah,
right in, and it's a done deal. But
yeah,
using up some of the brain power of the projector, that's not
yeah.
worth it for us.
Exactly. So, and the tone mapping means you can go in and make some minor adjustments to, is that what that is for?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just how much of the algorithm that you want to implement.
Sometimes you may selectively decide, I'm going to give up a little bit of that highlight detail to make the colors a little bit more vibrant. And that's something that that's a decision that you can make. It's a personal preference on how you want to best fine tune it for your needs.
Yeah, there's so much control on a JVC projector.
So we talked about the fact that you can fine tune it for your preferences. And that was the firmware that these guys showed me at CEDIA a year ago, at least a year ago. It seems like I've been in a time machine. And then Rob came over and did an update on a projector they loaned me, and all of a sudden, bang, another menu setting popped up called Theater Optimizer. And this is that other thing that we were talking about. So let's go in and look at the Theater Optimizing feature.
Certainly. So you go down to Theater Optimizer. Obviously, you want to turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the optimization level, again, is how much of the algorithm that's implemented. But this it literally will take the screen size. Obviously, you can input it right there, and the screen gain, and then set that for your room. Now, screen settings is what you mentioned earlier about being able to custom pick your material. The number, if you go on JVC's website and there's a chart there, you'll go and look up what screen material have. For example, we've been mentioning SI a lot. So for example, if you look up the Slate 1.2, it'll have a code there across from it, a 3-digit code that you'll enter in to this section right here, and then it'll make the changes for that. It'll account for essentially the darkness of the material and even to some degree the ALR aspects of it.
People who are buying at this level are a little more discerning, and they're trying to extract all of the performance from the projector. So being able to go in and tell it the type of screen, the gain, and the size, if it gives me any type of noticeable improvement, it's well worth it.
And it definitely does.
So there's two parts like we talked about. First thing is the projector can read the material frame by frame, scene by scene. It knows exactly what's going on. First, it knows what type of HDR you're playing. It knows if you're playing HDR or if you're not playing HDR. Once it knows you're playing HDR, it can measure scene by scene or frame by frame. So incredibly smart. And then once it has that information, it utilizes the other information that you have provided or it knows about itself, bulb life, how big the screen is, to best optimize. Because the more information it has, the better the decision it can make in your room, which really shows a higher level of performance. The first thing, to wrap it up, to make a great projector, you need to have great ingredients. You need to have a very good imaging device. And the JVC D-ILA imagers give you great native contrast, inky blacks with great shadow details, which is really going to make your colors pop. It's not about being the brightest. It's about delivering the best contrast to your eye. So you get that deep, almost OLED-like black level that really makes the picture more engaging. It has better lenses. Now you pay a premium for better lenses, but it ensures that you extract all of the detail from the native 4K panel. No pixel shifting here. So you get to extract all of that information. The bigger chassis means horizontal and vertical lens shift, less noise, less light leakage. So great ingredients. But in order to deliver the picture, you got to have a great recipe. And that is where Frame Adapt HDR and Theater Optimizer. It gives the chef all the information he needs to make the best meal with the ingredients that he has. And that is why you pay a premium for a JVC 4K projector. Would that sum it up, Patrick? I mean, I'm just thinking about it because people ask me these questions all the time.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Phil.
Okay. So Patrick, let's talk a little bit before we let you go about the models that are available. So the first thing is the NX5 or the RX1000. Just to remind people, what is the differences between those two projectors?
Well, you see it right there. If you look at that little teeny gold bezel around the projector lens, that is the difference. That and its channel of distribution.
This is a great projector, and it retails for about how much?
That one's $6,599.95.
Oh yeah. And like I said, that native contrast ratio of 40,000 to 1 is better than many LCD TVs that you could buy on the market. So that just shows you that these projectors are playing at a contrast level that most other projectors can only dream of when you talk about real world contrast.
At a native 40,000 to
yeah,
1, that
yeah,
at a native 40,000 to 1, that's industry leading. This
yeah,
literally has more contrast than any other projector on the market. And this is our least expensive D-ILA projector.
yeah, exactly. And it even has the multi-element all glass lenses that we talked about. So it's a killer piece. So moving up to the NX7 and the RS2000, the step up here is the brightness, a doubling of native contrast, as well as what's called a cinema filter, the ability to, by utilizing a filter, to expand the color gamut to cover all of the color, the color coverage that you would find in an actual cinema. So those, and what does this guy retail for?
This one's 9,000.
And like I said, this is the one that I reviewed and I absolutely loved it. I didn't want to give it back. But then as you move up the lineup, so this one is actually unique to the industry. So it utilizes a native 4K imager, but it is able to display 8K. So can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. It does something called E-shift pixel shifting, which it's E-shift is our version of pixel shifting. And it's got a lot to do with that big brain that you mentioned before, our ability to be able to process information very, very quickly. It'll generate a 4K image and then gives you a subset of pixels that are shifted by time and space just a little teeny bit to generate a much higher resolution.
So while it does not have 8K inputs, it will take your 4K, up convert it to 8K, and shift it to give you more detail. And this is great, especially if you're playing on a gigantic screen. The great lenses and the pixel shifting really allows you to get even closer to a larger picture, and it would be immersive.
That's one of the things that we were seeing in the industry was there were more and more dedicated home theaters going in the last few years, but the theaters were getting smaller and smaller. So you're seeing lots of low to mid high priced houses that want to have a home theater, but don't have a huge amount of room to expend. So this projector really fills that niche. You can get really, really close and have a fairly decent size image, and your resolution is fantastic.
And also the contrast goes up, the brightness goes up, and like I said, more resolutions. They do have some models above this, but for many people, this is the standard. And this piece retails for?
That one's 18,000.
And like I said, you have a few other pieces too that are notable. You do have your laser model, the bigger laser model. This one does not have frame adapt, but it does have auto tone mapping. It has great optics.
That RS4500 is going to give you a slightly better share of the color gamut than you're going to get even with the NX9, which again, we're very, very proud of being able to do 100% of DCI-P3.
And then for those who are looking for a family room, this is a great model, the LS-NZ3, which we reviewed as well, and I liked it.
Okay. And both those last two units are laser projectors. The RS4500 and the NZ3 are lasers. So you're going to get more life out of the lamp because it's a laser, not a lamp. There is one more projector in the lineup. It's the LX-UH1. Now, it's very similar to the LX-NZ3. It's a DLP projector, but it's lamp-based. It's not laser-based. One of the advantages that we have over our competitor in this style projector is these projectors have lens shift, not motorized lens shift, but they do have mechanical lens shift and quite a bit of it. So our competitors, by and large, don't have a lot of lens shift for those style projectors.
So, Patrick, thank you very much for coming and going over some of the technologies. If you're looking for a high-end projector, make sure that you check out JVC. So thank you guys very much. Patrick, thank you for coming, and take care, and we will talk to you soon.